Imagine stepping off a plane in a foreign country with 2 children, your last savings gone, and nothing to your name but a promise of inheritance that everyone else insists is a cruel joke. That's exactly where Itel Blackthornne found herself, standing on a rotting cabin porch in the misty English countryside, clutching her baby daughter Iris in one arm while her 8-year-old son Timothy clung to her coat. Across from her, the wealthy Blackthornne family, her late husband's siblings, laughed cruelly. They mocked the cabin, her so-called inheritance, joking it was worth less than $1. Their designer clothes and luxury cars gleamed against the mountain fog while her children trembled in the damp cold. But Timothy, innocent and curious, pointed through the mist at a towering castle in the distance. "Mama, whose castle is that?" he whispered. His uncle smirked and said it was Ravenscroft Castle, abandoned for decades, worthless like the land beneath her feet. With that, the family drove off, leaving her stranded. Alone, broke, and heartbroken, she pushed open the heavy oak door of the dilapidated cabin. Dust swirled in the broken light, but something about the massive stone fireplace and strange carved foundation stones told her this place held secrets. As night fell and her children finally slept, she noticed a set of mismatched floorboards, too new, too deliberate. Then came the sound, faint, echoing like footsteps deep below. She pressed Timothy's hand. "I don't know what that is, sweetheart," she whispered, her voice tight with both fear and determination. "But we're going to find out." At dawn, her exhaustion gave way to curiosity. With a rusty crowbar in hand, Itel pried the floorboards loose while Timothy held baby Iris safely outside. To her shock, instead of dirt, a hidden stone staircase appeared, descending into darkness. Against every sensible instinct, she fashioned a sling for Iris and began the descent with Timothy clutching a flashlight. Step by step, they entered a stone chamber carved into the earth, its walls covered in tapestries and crests of a raven clutching a golden crown. And in the center sat a chest, dark wood, bound in tarnished silver, but unlike everything else, it wasn't covered in centuries of dust. When she opened it, inside were leather-wrapped documents preserved as if waiting for her hands alone. She pulled one free and froze. Royal patents, deeds, maps. A family tree that traced the Blackthorne line back to Knights of the Crusades. And at the very bottom, a letter in handwriting she knew instantly, Garrett S., her late husband. "If you're reading this, they gave you what they thought was worthless. The truth is beneath your feet. Our children's legacy awaits across the valley. Trust no one." Tears blurred her vision, but clarity burned through. Ravenscroft Castle wasn't abandoned. It was theirs. Her cruel in-laws had mocked her with what they thought was a dead end, but they had unknowingly delivered her straight to the key of a dynasty. The castle, the land, and a fortune beyond imagination. Timothy's eyes widened as she explained. "Mama, does that mean we own a castle?" She pressed Garrett's letter to her chest, whispering, "It means your father gave us one last gift, sweetheart, and now we have to claim it." The next morning, armed with maps and hope, Itel carried Iris close and led Timothy across the valley. What she expected to be a crumbling ruin instead stopped her in her tracks. Ravenscroft Castle stood not abandoned, but thriving, its gardens manicured, its halls filled with tourists, and its profits flowing into coffers controlled by a heritage trust. At the gate, a plaque read, "Ownership disputed since 1943. That phrase made her heart pound. The documents in her backpack were the missing proof of rightful inheritance. She approached Dr. Helena Ashworth, the castle's heritage director, and when she showed the medieval charters, Ashworth nearly dropped her clipboard. "These are genuine," she whispered, her composure breaking. If authenticated, everything you see here, the land, the profits, the castle itself, belongs legally to your children. Ashworth revealed staggering numbers. Millions in yearly revenue, artifacts worth more than entire museums, and a trust account waiting for the rightful heirs. But there was a catch. Someone else had been circling the castle like vultures. Blackthornne Global Investments, owned by Roderick, her brother-in-law. The same man who had laughed in her face at the cabin knew exactly what this castle was worth, and now he was coming for it. As Itel absorbed the enormity of the situation, a text buzzed on her phone. "Saw you at the castle. Big mistake. Some things should stay buried." Her blood ran cold. She wasn't just fighting for heritage anymore. She was fighting for her children's lives. News spread like wildfire. Headlines screamed. American widow discovers castle fortune and from dollar cabin to $100 million estate. The Blackthornne siblings descended like predators, helicopters, and black SUVs rolling into the valley. They stormed the castle with lawyers, scoffing at the documents, screaming fraud. But independent experts authenticated everything. DNA tests proved Timothy and Iris were direct heirs. Roderick's bloodline, it turned out, wasn't legitimate for inheritance. They had always been the cadet branch, the outsiders. Their scheme unraveled further when hidden archives revealed they had defrauded elderly relatives for years, forging documents to steal millions. Worse, Garrett's mysterious death now looked less like an accident and more like a calculated move to bury secrets. With pressure mounting, Marcus, the quiet brother, broke down and admitted the truth. Their grandfather had always known they weren't the rightful heirs. He had hidden the castle away until Garrett's marriage, ensuring the true bloodline continued. Suddenly, everything snapped into place. Roderick had mocked Itel with the cabin because he believed the documents were lost. Instead, by giving her that key, he had unknowingly handed her the very proof that destroyed him. Furious, Roderick slammed fists, shouted, and even plotted custody battles to rip Timothy and Iris away. But the tide had turned. For once, the family's power and wealth couldn't rewrite history. The castle belonged to the widow they had tried to humiliate. But the Blackthornes weren't finished. When threats and lawsuits failed, they turned to darker measures. Anonymous texts promised danger. Security caught spies planting listening devices. Rumors swirled of hired men waiting for orders. And then, in a dramatic sting, Itel's allies set a trap using the castle's ancient passages. Security cameras recorded as intruders slipped in under cover of darkness, only to be sealed in stone corridors and arrested. Their orders traced back to Roderick's own lawyer: eliminate Itel and silence her forever. The world now saw the Blackthornes for what they were: frauds, criminals, and would-be murderers. Court cases snowballed. Financial crimes, inheritance fraud, conspiracy. Even the FBI joined in, uncovering millions siphoned from elderly relatives in America. The siblings' wealth crumbled as fast as their reputation. Roderick screamed in court, Cordelia fainted when presented with her forged signatures, and Marcus confessed everything, begging for mercy. Sentences were swift: 15 years, 8 years, 5 years. Their empire was gone, their freedom stripped away, and their humiliation complete, all because of the woman they mocked with a dollar cabin. Meanwhile, Itel and her children were declared the legal heirs. Not just of the castle, but of its treasures: medieval jewels, priceless manuscripts, even lost Van Dyck paintings hidden since the war. Overnight, the woman who had arrived penniless became custodian of a cultural fortune worth hundreds of millions. Yet she carried herself not with gloating, but with quiet dignity. When asked by reporters what she thought of the sentencing, she simply said, Justice has been served. My children and I can now focus on honoring the legacy entrusted to us. Life at Ravenscroft Castle transformed. What had once been a symbol of greed became a sanctuary of history, community, and new beginnings. Timothy thrived, exploring every corridor, memorizing portraits of ancestors, and even giving tour to schoolchildren, explaining their family's place in history. Baby Iris grew into a lively child, racing through rose gardens and hallways that echoed with laughter instead of bitterness. Dr. Ashworth became a grandmotherly figure, guiding Itel through the maze of heritage management. And together, they began projects that ensured the castle wasn't just a monument to the past, but a beacon for the future educational programs, scholarships for children who lost parents, cultural festivals that breathed new life into the valley. But shadows still lingered. Questions about Garrett's death resurfaced when evidence suggested Roderick may have tampered with his car. Itel Blackthornne, a 94-year-old great-aunt in America, confirmed Garrett had learned the truth shortly before his accident. The possibility that his death was no accident haunted Itel, but it also steeled her resolve. Garrett had trusted her to finish what he started, and she had. The same siblings who once laughed at her were now locked behind bars, their empire dismantled. For the first time since his passing, she felt Garrett's presence not as grief, but as strength. He had left her not just with memories, but with a destiny. Years passed and Ravenscroft blossomed. What began as survival became stewardship of a kingdom reborn. Timothy, now a teenager, carried his father's quiet strength, leading children's tour with pride. Iris, mischievous and full of wonder, became the castle's heart, adored by staff and villagers alike. Tourism surged, academic researchers flocked to its archives, and international media hailed it as one of the greatest heritage rediscoveries of the century. Itel, once mocked as a penniless widow, now stood as guardian of history, shaping a legacy not of greed but of generosity. Even Marcus's family reached out, his wife and daughters seeking forgiveness, and Itel welcomed them. Because for her children, family would never again mean cruelty or exclusion. The castle became not just their home, but a home for many, a place where the past and present coexisted in harmony. And though threats had once loomed, though enemies had tried to strip everything from them, in the end, their cruelty became her strength. What began with a rotting cabin and cruel laughter had transformed into one of the greatest victories in heritage history. And so, from a dollar cabin mocked as worthless to a castle empire worth millions, the story of Itel Blackthornne is one of resilience, fate, and destiny. Her journey wasn't just about uncovering wealth, but reclaiming identity, legacy, and a future for her children. She turned humiliation into triumph, betrayal into justice, and ruins into royalty. As the sun rises each morning over Ravenscroft Castle, its towers glowing against the mist, it stands as a reminder that sometimes life's cruelest jokes are fate's greatest setups. The Blackthorne siblings thought they had given her nothing. Instead, they gave her everything. And Garrett's words echoed true. The truth is beneath your feet. For Itel and her children, that truth became a kingdom. If you found yourself captivated by this unbelievable true-life tale of betrayal, discovery, and justice, make sure you hit the like button, drop a comment sharing what shocked you most, and subscribe for more incredible stories that prove reality can be stranger than fiction. Because here, every story has a twist, and you won't want to miss the next one.